Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Bill Flanagan and I'm the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Alberta. And I would like to welcome everyone today joining us on live stream. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. And with me today is Provost Steve Dew and also Rob Munro, who is the Executive Lead for the SET initiative. And also viewing online is Todd Gilchrist, our new incoming VP Finance and Admin. And I just wanted to say a particular hello to Todd. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the University of Alberta is situated on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. And there's also, of course, a great celebration going on here at the University of Alberta. Very exciting news with the Nobel Prize to our colleague, Michael Houghton. And this is Canada's only second Nobel Prize in medicine here at the University of Alberta. We're tremendously proud of Michael and his accomplishments and his contributions. And it's really a wonderful moment for all of us just to pause and celebrate the tremendous research that is going on here at the University of Alberta. I'd also like to thank those of you who were able to participate in the town hall last week. We had over 2,000 people on the live stream and over 1,000 were able to participate in the thought exchange. And we'll also be doing a little thought exchange today. Thought exchange is a great way for us to get as much feedback as we can from as many people as possible in a very short period of time. And so it is a useful tool for that purpose, and we will be using it for today. It's critical that we hear from all members of our community. And I want to thank you for being a part of this discussion and for providing your input into the development of the University of Alberta for tomorrow. One of the key concerns that we heard in last week's town hall is the issue of job loss. And in response, we issued a clarification on job loss that was published on Friday. Just wanted to draw your attention to that. As you know, last spring, as a result of the cuts to our Campus Alberta grants, the university announced a projected number of job reductions in the range of about 1,000 that would be lost over the next 2 years as a result of the budget reductions. And these job reductions have been ongoing through retirements, departures, and also some layoffs. About 400 had been reduced by the end of the fiscal year last year. And over this year and the next year, we project an additional 650 job reductions. What I want to be clear, however, is that the SET initiative, what we're talking about today, is not about additional job reductions. We are not projecting any more job reductions than what was projected earlier this spring in March as a result of the budget cuts. Instead, the SET initiative is designed so that we can be strategic in how we go about these job reductions. What we can't do is expect the remaining employees of the university to do the same amount of work in the same way with 1,000 fewer employees. That would be simply an unsustainable burden on our remaining employees. So instead, the SET initiative is designed to find efficiencies so that we can provide high quality services and indeed even improve the level of services that we offer on campus with fewer staff. So SET is about trying to be strategic in how we deal with these job reductions. SET is not about additional job loss. And I just want to pause and note that losing highly skilled and valued colleagues is enormously difficult for all of us here in the university community. And of course, particularly difficult for those directly affected. And it's important that we recognize that and recognize the impact not only on those affected, but on the remaining employees who are required to undergo this restructuring and deal with this change. And the expertise and knowledge of all of our staff members is going to be critical as we work through this process of change at the University of Alberta. And I just also want to note that the participation of the unions, and in particular the union representatives, is very important throughout this process. And both Steve and I are committed to meeting regularly with the presidents of the unions. And of course, the union representatives also sit on the two governing bodies that will determine matters of academic restructuring and also the SET initiative, that being the Board of Governors and GFC. So the ongoing participation of all members of the university community, including the union representatives, is going to be absolutely key to the success of what we're trying to achieve. So last week we talked about academic restructuring, and today we're going to be talking about administrative restructuring, how we can create economies of scale and streamline the administrative support services offered here on campus. And on the SET side, we can take advantage of economies of scale, we can reduce bureaucracy, and we can streamline services. Again, the goal here is to continue to deliver a high level, high quality services on campus, but to do that with fewer numbers of people. And now I'd like to turn it over to Rob Munro for a short presentation, updating on SET and answering a few of the questions that we have been hearing so far. And then after Rob's presentation, we will run a short thought exchange where we can gather your questions and comments, and then we'll have an opportunity to respond. So thank you, and over to you, Rob.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming to our town hall today. I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully that has come up. As Bill mentioned, we're just going to do a very quick presentation. We want to make sure that we have enough time to answer the questions of our community. Oops. Oh, there we go. Okay. For today's discussion, we just want to provide a bit of an overview of the SET program, where we've been and where we're going to go in our next steps. During this presentation, I also hope to answer some of the questions that have come up previously in Thought Exchange and in some of the conversations that we've had with our community. So this is reiterating some of the comments from Bill, but I think it's important to recognize this. The unfortunate reality of our budget cuts is that we have to reduce our workforce by approximately 1,050 positions. We need to note, though, this is not SET. SET is not causing the job losses. SET is the university's response to the budget cuts. Some elements of the SET program actually should be able to hopefully reduce the number of losses, and I'll discuss those in detail in the presentation. We know that people are concerned of increased workload. Trying to do the same amount of work with less people using the same processes is just not sustainable, and SET is designed to address these issues. SET hopefully will allow us to meet our core missions of research, teaching, and community engagement within our funding envelope. So the SET program has only been in place since early June of 2020. So we started our works approximately 4 months ago and really have accomplished an awful lot of activity in that period of time. SET has 3 streams. It's procurement, space and facilities, and administrative redesign. And I'll talk about all these streams separately. First thing I want to mention is that our model has a dean co-sponsor approach. So we all have to work together to make sure that we succeed through this transformation. It's important that we understand all of the issues associated with the faculties and the central portfolios. So as such, we have adopted a principle of having co-sponsors for all of the major areas of work. One sponsor is a dean that is the voice of the faculties, and one has a high degree of knowledge and is the admin sponsor. Together, they help to ensure that the processes that we're modifying achieve the results that we need to achieve going forward. So now I want to talk about the procurement work stream. So we have started a process with an external consultant, a specialist, KPMG in this case, who is helping us review all of our aspects of procurement from start to finish. Savings here are very important as they are non-labor savings. So if we can get substantial savings here, it gives us the potential to reduce the number of layoffs in the future. We are working with KPMG. They are going through all of our processes currently. They've been doing this for a period of time, and we expect the final report from KPMG in November of this year. And at that point in time, we'll have a better understanding of the amount of savings that are on the table and the timing of those savings. And of course, we will share that information with our community. Second stream is our space and facilities work stream. And here we're working with our colleagues in F&O, building on the great work that they've been doing to date to review all of our space and facilities areas. Again, we're using KPMG. We went through a competitive bid process and KPMG won in both of these bid processes. And we're using their expertise as another set of eyes to help evaluate what we can do within our facilities, space and facilities areas. Again, they're going to issue a report later this year, and it'll give us the ability to see what savings might be in place. And again, these are non-labor savings, so potentially could reduce the amount of job losses going forward. So these two streams are very vital to the university. The report that KPMG will issue in the space and facilities stream will discuss the nature of the activities that we can do to reduce the expenditures, and we're specifically trying to target any area that we can do quickly, recognizing that much of the work within space and facilities may need an investment and may be longer term, but we do want to try to identify anything that we can do in short order. Now I want to turn my attention to the administrative redesign. And this is the activities around how we provide services across the university. Much of our initial progress to date is to land a new operating model. The operating model is just the way we organize our structures and processes to deliver our administrative services. This stream is designed to have a $95 million in savings. And you can see the 6 dominant functional areas as part of this review process. And as mentioned previously, we have co-sponsors in all those different functional areas. We are using a database approach on identifying our new operating model. And I know some people have had concerns about the validity of the uniform information. I want to assure our community that the uniform provides a starting point and a baseline for the analysis of the university's administrative services. It is a valuable information, but is not the only source of information that we are using. We have completed over 30 sessions with leadership groups to have a full understanding of the current state. And it's a combination of all the different types of information that we're using as we're looking at a new operating model going forward. One of the first steps we identified when we started to look at a new administrative operating model was what are the principles that we really have to ensure that we meet in order to ensure that we're meeting the core mission for the university. And this slide shows some of the different principles that were important to us as we started evaluating the operating model. It allows us to focus on the core missions of teaching, research, and engagement. It strives for sustainable, meaningful careers, and it is flexible to any academic restructuring model. So we have to make sure that we're building the operating model so that it'll accommodate any academic restructuring that occurs in the future as well. So that was one of the principles that we're looking at when we're looking at the operating model. So the preferred operating model framework. So I just want to take you down a bit of a journey with us. Is to start with, we looked at every possible potential operating model, from services that are completely centralized to services that are completely in the faculties themselves. We quickly realized that a blended approach would be required to meet our principles. So we cannot go to a completely centralized model. We cannot go to a completely faculty-led model. So we have to do a blended approach. We completed a detailed review of 3 different operating models from here. And we have developed a preferred model, and I'll show the details of it in the next slide. I do want to address one other question that has come up, and we've had questions on why are we only looking at Australian universities or only a specific Australian university. In fact, we have been looking at many highly performing research-intensive universities and how they provide their administrative services going forward. We're looking at universities that have gone through transformations similar to what we have gone through to gain from their experiences so that we can learn from them. We've also been looking at Canadian universities to gain from their experiences as well. So we've looked at University of Calgary to look at their service partner model, and we've looked at University of Saskatchewan to look at their transaction hub model. So through this entire process, we have landed on what we consider to be the preferred operating model. This operating model framework has been reviewed by senior leadership, and in all cases, everybody has supported this operating model. This is a visual representation of the elements within the model itself. We will have service centers, so we're contemplating having a staff center and a student service center where those individuals can can get their information from that service center. We will have centers of excellence within this operating model, and this is how the central portfolios will deliver their services. So that's an indication of the center areas and how they will deliver their services out to the faculties in other areas. We will have service partners. So the service partners are going to be embedded in the faculties themselves, but they respond back to the center portfolio area. The service partners are intended to be a trusted advisor of the faculty and help them access all the services that they need to be successful going forward. The faculties themselves will be providing some of the services, particularly where there's specialization or unique needs within the faculties. And then the last piece of this is a transaction processing hub. So we're looking at all the transactional activity, and that's whether it's within IT, finance, HR, and putting them all into one transactional processing hub. So that's the nature of the model. This model will go to the board on October 16th, and we're asking them to approve this model at that point in time. Lastly, I want to talk about our community and engagement processes. We know our community wants to have more engagement and more communication from us, and we are committed to that. And we will be looking for other opportunities that we have, with every opportunity that we can find to engage with our community. University's leadership has been highly engaged up to this point in time as we've developed the preferred operating model. Beyond this, we start getting into the design detailed work. And at this point in time, we have to make sure that we're engaging all of our community. We have to have all the subject matter experts, the people that understand the processes and how we deliver the services across the university. We have to have their input to understand what works currently within our systems and what does not work within our systems. And that information will what we'll use to design the operating model going forward. And that's my presentation. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Rob. In a few moments, I'll get started with a thought exchange, which is an opportunity for us to gather your thoughts, your key questions that we can then spend some time responding to. Just a couple of quick comments from me just before we get there. First off, do want to recognize how challenging this is for our community to be undergoing this very significant, enormous transformation on an unprecedented amount of time frame, and to be doing that while we're also wrestling with COVID. So do very much recognize the pressure this puts on our people. It is critical at the end of the day that we go through this process in a compassionate manner that reflects our respect for the individuals who've given so much for this institution. We want to make sure that as much as possible we keep those people in the organization that we're trying to build, and that means finding ways to transition into new roles. And any advice that we have about how to do that in a manner that is as respectful and compassionate as possible would be very, very interested in hearing. In the spirit of hearing, I'll ask Claire to put up a link. Some of you will be familiar with how we engage or transition people into Thought Exchange. That link will have a QR code if you're using a cell phone, for example. There's the address also on the bottom of the slide. But the easiest way to engage with Thought Exchange is to refresh your browser that you're using to watch this live stream. At the bottom should be a link that you can then click on and follow that directly to the Thought Exchange site. There's a couple of questions just to get you started, and then ask you to fill in your top thoughts, and then help rate other thoughts that will appear, and that will help us to inform how to best respond to most people's top interests. So we'll take 7 minutes for that, and I'll call you back in 7, and we'll go through that process. Okay, folks, I think we'll pull you back now. Let me share my screen so that we can see some of the thought exchange data. So this just gives a quick synopsis of the participants. We had 680 participants. You can see the breakdown is predominantly our support staff, about 2/3, a quarter our academic staff, and the rest in the other categories. Just quickly flash a word cloud just to give a sense of what much of the thoughts are focused on. And then we'll just refresh the top thoughts. So these are the ones that are most highly ranked by most people. And we'll just start working our way through some of these thoughts. So first question is, how will people be let go? And will that be based on faculty, seniority, etc.? So Rob, I'm going to punt most of these questions over to you. So if you can take your shot at that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So the one comment I do have to make probably at the start is that we are working through a lot of the detail right now. A lot of the detail work has yet to be determined. And I apologize for that up front, is that some of the questions, frankly, we just don't have the answers yet, and we're going to work through the detail. The questions, though, are valuable, of course, to us, because it does help us in determining the kind of things, the activities that we need to complete. So a general thought about how people we let go, it's we really have to make that determination of where people land in the new operating model. The general comment I'd make, though, is that, of course, we have to follow all of our processes that we currently have. All of our collective agreements and the like are a vital piece of how we would actually go through this process. And of course, we would be as compassionate as we absolutely can with all of those people that are affected. But some of the absolute details of that we don't have at this point in time yet.
Okay, the next question is, in Sydney, administration laid off a large portion of their support workers and then rehired them at a lower rate. Is that the U of A strategy too?
And yeah, my comment would be that that's really not the kind of strategy that we'd be looking at. Is again, we'd be following our processes here, but that is really not something that we had contemplated.
I'll just add, I know there's been some suggestions that we're closely following a Sydney model. Went to, I think, heard this a little bit from Rob as well. We're looking at literally dozens of different institutions for best practices, going through all of this. On the SET side, the expertise that we're tapping on was not involved in Sydney, so that's practically not one of the best examples of how we're building our strategy. Let me scroll down here. A related question, will the university lay off staff and then require that they reapply or recompete to newer adjusted positions? Rob, any further on that?
It's similar to the other questions as well. Again, we haven't worked out through the whole processes in here. The one thing that I do want to comment on, though, is that as much as possible, of course, we're going to keep all the positions within the university. We know that there's going to be some new positions that are created. The transaction hub is a new kind of process as well. We would want to make sure that we have good training processes in place and the like. We want to make sure that our people are going to be as successful as possible in their new roles. So those we don't have the detail of that yet, but those principles are things that we definitely would be part of this entire process as well.
Can you give a specific example of a service activity that flows through the new model? Something going beyond just the 5 boxes.
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. And it's a way of making the model real, is to understand what some of the different processes that could be. So if I'm thinking of an example might be a budgeting type of activity. Some of the budgeting activity would occur within the finance center of excellence. Some of the backbone, some of the underlying budgeting would occur in the central portfolio there. The faculties, of course, would access some of that information through their service partner, who would help them with that whole budgeting process. There might be aspects of that would be going through the transaction hub, kind of a related service that would go through the transaction hub is likely payroll systems would go through there. So that's one kind of example. A hiring process might be an example as well. So again, there would be a center of excellence within HR that would help with the hiring processes. The faculties would access that through their service partners, would help in those different processes. And part of that, of course, would then go through the transaction hub. The piece I haven't maybe mentioned in here is the service center. An example of that could be if I'm a staff member and I'm having trouble with my IT, with my laptop, is I would access the service center, and they can help me with the information I need to make sure that I'm able to access my computer and deal with any kind of issue that I'm dealing with. The other piece within this is some of the service specialty areas within the faculties would continue to remain within the faculty. So we always talk about an example of we have of course our farms, and we have cows, and somebody has to take care of the cow. Well, that's a specialty activity that's never going to be centralized. That would be in the faculties themselves. Hopefully those are good examples.
Okay, thank you. Timelines. What are the timelines for centralizing service units?
So we are, as I mentioned, is we have a milestone coming up on October 16th, and we are asking the board to approve the operating model. So it's all contingent on the approval from the board at that point in time. So, and in the meantime, we have been starting some work to understand the nature of all of the different activities that fall in those major buckets that I mentioned before, whether it's research, IT, and the like. So we're getting a feel from developing service catalogs on what activities would end up in a transaction hub, what would be in a service center, what remains in the faculties, and the like. We anticipate that we would start doing some of that work and moving some of the work in as early as November timeframe. The bulk of the work, though, that people will see more activity is likely to occur in January. And frankly, it's a longer process, is we cannot do everything at once. So we do anticipate that we'll move what we can. We'll prioritize the services that we think can move early. And then it will continue through 2021 and even into 2022. With the size of the change, it's important that we really do a good evaluation of the different processes, make sure that we understand what processes can't break in the change, and then move and move them to make sure that they don't break, and then phase everything over that period of time.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I think, just covers ground we've already been on, which is how people move to the new positions. Let's jump to what number of the 1,000 job losses do you estimate are from Oshawa, and what number from Nassau?
We really have not done the analysis on that level of detail. So we don't know the split at this point in time.
Here's a question. It does relate a bit to the timeline question. There might be some more you wish to elaborate on. When will we see the proposed structural changes if the plan is going to the board on October 16, 2020? Maybe just describe a little bit about what is going to the board.
So what we're taking to the board is actually the one graphic that I showed earlier was the operating model, and it showed the different elements. So we're providing some detail to the board on those different operating elements, just providing some information on what activities would be in each one of the different elements, the potential size of those elements, and at the end state, because there will be a transition to it, and some detail around other organizations that have these type of systems in place as well. So that's the kind of information that we're presenting to the board on October 16th, and of course answering any questions that they would have.
Okay, thanks. Next one again just deals with transitions of employees. The question after also deals a bit with how people are going to be redeployed, but invokes the element of participation by faculties. And maybe that's the right thing to pull out of this question is how do we invite participation by faculties, by staff in the process. So not just the consultation, but the process.
So, and that's part of the reason that we want to make sure that we have that co-sponsor model is that one, when we're developing the processes, is that we have that faculty voice. We understand exactly what's important to them. So at a grand level, we have their understanding of what the processes are, and what's important to them while we when we have the design criteria. The faculties will be heavily involved in the transformation. It'll be a joint effort on deciding what activities will end up moving over to hubs and how that whole transformation will take place. The success of this program really is dependent on making sure that we have that full involvement from all the different areas, and the faculties, of course, have been involved in this whole process up to now and will continue to be involved.
Thank you. Next question is related, but it's how do we decide which transactions happen in the hub or the service center or the centers of excellence versus which happen in the faculties?
Oh, yeah, excellent question as well. So as I mentioned before, we're currently in a process. We're engaging with subject matter experts in all of those major administrative activities. So that's research, IT, HR. As a first step, we established a group to look at the different services that typically are in those areas and make a draft document on what activities will go into the transaction hub, what's most appropriate in the service center, what's most appropriate in the faculties and in the centers of excellence. So that draft is something that's under development right now, and then we have to we'll have to do more review with the different parties to make sure that we get that draft right. The other piece that I should mention in this whole process is it is a process, and there are going to be bumps along the way. We know with the size of the change that there's going to be a dip in performance. It's just a change management curve. We will make sure that we're doing everything we can to engage everybody and that we manage that dip. There will be mistakes that are made in the process. We're going to monitor the processes through this whole transformation, and we'll modify as we need to going forward as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, has this university senior leadership considered taking pay cuts to keep more staff employed? I'll probably toss this one to Bill, but will say personally, I have participated in the voluntary programs, and others have also stepped up to do that. We do recognize that this is something that we all have to contribute to. But Bill, over to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. As I announced, I suppose a number of weeks ago, we have reduced the number of senior leadership positions in the President's office from 9 to 7. My own salary is 32% lower than that of my predecessor. and in reducing the numbers of senior administrators in the president's office. And also, as there have been departures in this office, we've also moderated the salaries of the new people who are being appointed. So these are savings in the range of about $800,000, $900,000 a year. So we have, of course, taken cuts within the senior administration at the university, but of course, we're also facing cuts to our budget in the range of $110 million in this year alone. So although these cuts are helpful at the senior level, they are of course only a drop in the bucket when we're looking at the scale of the financial challenge facing the university. But that said, it's very important that we lead by example. It's very important that we share in the pain of this. And indeed, there have been significant cuts at a senior administration level.
The next question, again, about consultation. This one, I think, is speaking more to the frontline people and how they are going to be involved in the discussion around process improvement, process streamlining.
Okay, so as I mentioned previously, as we've been developing the service catalogs, is we did establish some teams of subject matter experts to understand the nature of the services. So that's one step of where we've had engagement. We do contemplate as we go through all of the detailed design that we have to engage, obviously, with our frontline staff. They are the ones that understand the processes. They understand what is working, what is not working. So they really need to be heavily involved in this whole process by process, as we evaluate them, to make sure that we're making the right changes to the processes, that again, we're making sure that the things that can't break, that they identify, and we really watch those through to make sure that we maintain those processes going forward. So we really do believe that there will be an awful lot of opportunity for frontline staff to be involved in the process.
Next question is, how much of the 127 million will be set savings and how much will come from academic restructuring? I'll take a first stab at this and invite others to contribute as they wish. So the majority of the savings are going to have to come from SET. That's where the greatest opportunities lie for us. It will be a little bit difficult to tease out the two different approaches because both SET and academic restructuring, part of them both are to reduce our administrative costs, one through an economies of scale and simplification process, organizational simplification process, the other looking at the processes themselves to try and reduce the amount of work. Both of those will help us to reduce our administrative spending. It will be a little bit harder to separate which strategy is the one that got us to a particular place. But the folks would have seen the scenarios that have been put forward on academic restructuring. Those typically talk about $20 to $30 million on that order coming out of the administrative side, and perhaps say 10 million or so coming out of the reduction in leadership costs. So that gives you a sense of the art of the possible on the academic restructuring piece. And the balance is going to come from the three major streams that Rob talked about: the procurement, the facilities piece, and particularly the administrative restructuring components. So that's not as precise an answer to two decimal places. It's going to depend on where GFC and the board decide ultimately they are comfortable in going on both of the pieces, but particularly the academic restructuring. But of the order of the numbers that were in the interim report of the academic restructuring working group, that's what we're targeting on the academic side. Again, reflecting there is some overlap in those dollars that come through the administrative piece. Bill, Rob, more to add to that?
No, nothing on my end.
Yeah, I think you covered it.
Okay. Next one is, again, stressing the need to have NASA and ASHWA engaged in academic restructuring working group and SET. Meaningful consultation is not enough. Bill, can I invite you to take the first stab at that one?
Yes, as I indicated in my opening remarks, having NASA and ASHWA engaged in the process is absolutely critical to the success of what we're achieving. Of course, both unions are represented on the Board of Governors and at GFC. And these are the two governing bodies, GFC in particular, that will be making a recommendation on academic restructuring, a recommendation to the board, and the board, of course, also dealing with the SET initiative. Steve and I are also meeting on a regular basis with the presidents going forward. Again, very important that they have ready access to us as we undertake this process of transformation. And of course, there's also an advisory board that, or an advisory group that has been set up with the SET initiative involving NASA and ASHWA employees who are going to be very engaged in the whole process. And Rob, perhaps you might want to talk a little bit about the role of the advisory group.
Absolutely. So we did establish the staff advisory team. We've had our first meeting on September 21st, and we actually have another meeting this afternoon. Our first meeting, and actually a number of the meetings to start with are going to be just bringing the group up to speed, making sure they have all the information to be able to provide us with their input. At today's meeting, we've actually got a series of breakouts for the group for them to be able to give us their input on some of the risks associated with the operating model. Offline, the group has made a number of very good comments on how we can manage the meetings themselves, to different comments on areas that they have interest in going forward. So we anticipate this group is going to be providing us vital input going forward. The original terms of reference stated monthly meetings. We're going to talk to the group today because we think in the short term we probably should be making those at 2 week intervals. But that's a discussion with the group themselves to see if they're comfortable about that kind of time frame.
The last question I have listed here, and I'll refresh the list in a minute because I know that there's been some additions. And this is the question, why don't you consider FGSR an academic unit? I would say that we do consider FGSR an academic unit. It is not considered in the various academic restructuring scenarios that have been put out, because all of those are dealing with approaches to consolidation and building closer ties for interdisciplinary academic delivery units. FGSR it is not being contemplated for consolidated within one of the other faculties. We are, of course, looking at FGSR from both of the restructuring perspectives to make sure that we have the most effective and efficient model for administering graduate students, no matter what that looks like. So FGSR is very much part of the conversation. It's just not appearing in the boxes because we wouldn't contemplate putting FGSR and engineering together to create a new kind of unit. That FGSR having a span that crosses the whole institution, that sort of arithmetic doesn't make sense. But it is very much part of the conversation on the academic restructuring and the SET side. We're through the top thoughts, but I know that if I refresh, there will be some further questions. So let's go back to the top and make sure that we have hit all of the ones that are our top thoughts. This one looks like a new one. So what types of support staff positions will be most likely moved to central as opposed to staying in the faculties? Rob, do you want to take a first stab at that? I might have some things to add to that as well.
Yeah, you might have better information, better thought, or better stab at than I have. Honestly, a lot of that work is the detailed work that we're starting to do right now. So do not have a lot of information yet on what support staff would likely move to different areas. If you think about the different central portfolios, being again like IT and HR and the like, people that have those skill sets are probably the ones that are more likely to move into central roles. But again, that level of detail is something that we work out through the rest of the process.
I'll add from an academic restructuring perspective, the roles and functions that we absolutely need to keep in the faculties and keep close to the academic programs are those that directly tie to the specifics of the curriculum and the program delivery themselves. So elements such as student advising, for example, or parts that deal with delivery of curriculum-related experience activities such as community service learning, for example. Those would be pieces that need to be anchored in the faculties and are very specific to what the faculty does. There will be some faculty unique functions, and Rob talked about caring for cows as an example. Obviously not going to be centralized, but things that are more institutional procedural. So our HR processes, finance, probably much of IT, but probably not all of IT. Those would be things that would be most likely moved to consolidated roles, whether that's central or within some other kind of consolidation that maybe is not in the center, such as some of the divisional models that we talked about within academic restructuring. Those are the pieces that are most likely going to be moved around. Next question we saw. That one we saw. Got a comment here. This is not consultation. Consultation requires two-way flow of communication. You have already decided on the set restructuring. You're now informing us. So, Bill, Rob, comments on how consultation occurs?
Yes, I think this is an important question. And I know some people are frustrated with thought exchange because it's not a dialogue. We're not actually able to talk to one another. One of the advantages of thought exchange is that we have, I think, probably over a range of about 1,000 people participating. So we know the top thoughts and top concerns of 1,000 people, which is a powerful tool. We could not possibly do that without a tool like thought exchange, but it's no substitute for dialogue and indeed a two-way flow of communication, as this comment notes. So one thing I want to say is that Steve and I are meeting with each faculty. All faculty members, students, and staff are invited to join in these town hall meetings. And these meetings are dialogue. These meetings are not thought exchange, and they are not presentations. And we've had 2 of them to date with KSR and the School of Business. Both I thought were very, very informative, really helpful. We had a great dialogue with faculty, staff, and students, learning a lot about each of those 2 faculties and their concerns and priorities around academic restructuring and SET. So I would encourage all of you going forward, where there's still many of these to go. Our schedule is packed in the next week or so with town halls with each faculty. So I would encourage you all to participate in those. That will be an opportunity for a two-way dialogue. Unfortunately, given the size of the town halls and just the several thousand who are participating, and of course, in the context of COVID, we're having to do all of this online. We do have some constraints around the very large town halls, but the faculty town halls and indeed other smaller roundtables going forward, that's an opportunity for the two-way dialogue, which is so important to what we're trying to achieve.
I'll add that we are having discussions, of course, at all of our governance bodies and standing committees. So there's another opportunity to engage in that two-way conversation. Rob's already talked about the staff advisory team as another forum for that two-way discussion. So there are indeed many of these. As always, if you're not at one of those tables, we would very much encourage your participation through online information, etc. So very many opportunities to engage and hope that you will take that chance to do so. Let me just scan if there's any other new questions here. I know our time is almost over. Here's one new one. Who will determine who the subject matter experts are? Is this defined by central or by the faculties? Rob, how are we going to get the right people in the room to make sure that we can take apart our processes?
So the initial list of subject matter experts, we went to the functional areas and asked them for a list of people that they thought could help us inform the first cut at the service catalogs. I would anticipate that we'll go to those different areas, and where we'll need the subject matter expertise is going to be process by process. So we'll, if it's payroll, we will engage with HR, identify the people that are on the frontline staff that deal with payroll issues, make sure that we get a diverse group from across the entire university, not just one area. Gather the group together and have them help us walk through the process to understand it and how we'd look to ultimately change that process if we do change that process. So the short answer is we will be going process by process into the different areas to identify the people that have the best knowledge.
Okay, I think we've gone through the new top thoughts. I know we're out of time here, so Bill, I'm just going to turn it over to you to just close us out.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Rob, and thank you, all of you who have participated in today's town hall. As I mentioned earlier, we're holding faculty roundtables going forward the next few weeks. All faculty, staff, and students are invited to those roundtables. That's an opportunity for a two-way exchange, a dialogue, which again is so important to what we're trying to achieve. So I would really encourage all of you to participate in those town halls going forward. And again, the feedback that we've gotten today, I think, is enormously helpful. And as I mentioned, Thought Exchange is a very powerful tool for getting the top thoughts of a very large number of people, as we did today. And some of the thoughts that are resonating with me are a lot of concern about the process going forward, particularly around the process of change for individual employees. Does this involve reapplying, recompeting for positions? I mean, as Rob mentioned, a lot of details are yet to be worked out. But one thing that I take home for me is that we need to get those details out to our staff as soon as possible. The details of the more detailed process of how this will roll out. And certainly we're committed to doing that, because again, I can certainly hear the uncertainty is difficult for staff members. And this is a time of great change for the university community. And we need to commit to not only engaging with the university community as much as we can as we undertake this process of change, but also sharing as much information as we can. Because of course, it is in sharing this information that people will see that the process of change and what it entails. And I think this ideally will go a considerable distance to bringing the university community together as we undertake this very significant change in how we structure administrative services on campus. There's also going to be some additional town halls. There'll be one town hall this month for alumni, and there were an additional 3 town halls in November and December. So again, as we have more details and as we roll out those more details and the data that is supporting these details, the town halls will be an opportunity again to engage, answer your questions, and learn more from the community about what your top concerns are. And of course, all feedback that we receive online or by email will be going to the working groups. And so once again, I just want to thank all of you for participating today. The Thought Exchange will remain open for another day if you wish to continue to participate or add any additional thoughts. And of course, please follow ongoing updates on our University of Alberta for Tomorrow website. So once again, thank you everyone. Thank you to my colleagues, and I look forward to continuing to engage with all members of the university community. Thank you.